thank you, York, for a nice introduction and a very nice talk to open the section. So I guess I'm just to follow on that York's talk, because he talked about the fate and how do we mitigate the risk of the plants entering the risk of the trace elements entering the plants for food security. So I'm moving on with the source. Moving forward with the source, and then we'll moving the other way around downstream about the treatments to see how can we deal with the biochar to make it more feasible or more applicable for the trace elements removal. So the first half will be about the overview of like a review of the source of the trace elements that York and I are working together on recently. Is another thing that we are going to prepare for submission. So it's with the different source of elements that we like to focus on the elements itself, rather than focusing on the waste stream that a lot of available reviews are focusing on waste stream A, and then there's contaminants or elements A, B, C, D, E, and then the other one is waste stream B, and then the other types of elements. Instead of that, we would like to focus on the elements and to start with to find where they are, so that we can have more focus or oriented treatments and management of those materials. So we classify into different types, including like potentially toxic metals or metal rocks, and then the radioactive metals and rare earth elements, and then these are the major types that we focus on, so that we hope that we can have a better idea where are they from, and then what are their potential interactions and what are the perspective we need to do better. So solid waste, like in urban life, we have municipal solid waste in our olden days that end up maybe in landfill, and end up in landfill eventually could be from leach out as a leachate, or could be end up in incinerator, and the incinerator could end up in ashes, fire ashes. That could be the main one that with the vaporized metals or trace elements, and also solid the bottom ash as well. And both ashes will be either reused or will be dumped. And then industrial waste, actually there's a bigger amount. The industrial waste is even larger amount in volume than the municipal solid waste. In terms of the weight, it's much more. It's like 10 times or so more than the municipal solid waste. But it's actually often overlooked, because a lot of cases municipal solid waste we see it daily. But then industrial wastes, we don't see it. Only industry people are dealing with that. And then if you have a good legislation and good enforcement, then you don't worry about the industrial waste disposal or discharge. But in many other cases, actually that may not be the case. And then when we have some difficulty or some loophole that people do not do the enforcement of the legislation well, then there will be a chance that a lot of illegal discharge, like in the form of like sludge, that actually like wastewater or the sludge, that even after treatment, then the sludge. The plants, for example, the paper mill, pulp and paper, wastewater, they will treat it and turn it into sludge. But then what happens to the last sludge? They don't care about that. They just give some money to someone else, for example in China, and then someone else will come to treat their sludge. But then whether they're really treating their sludge or just dumping their sludge, then that's the question. That will happen in a lot of cases. The company B get the money, supposed to treat the sludge, but end up just find somewhere and dump it. So eventually that's the untreated cases. That happens. Similarly for the ash combustion residue as well, that is containing lots of the elements that we have. And the other one that has been, like was Wong, did a lot of work, and one of the pioneers in this is electronic waste. That is like starting from 10 years ago that we started to be aware of that. And then it's still going on, a lot of the electronic waste we're creating. And so we have lots of those elements in the recycling process with the acid washing, acid leaching recovery, and then those acid solutions will end up like easy to be disposed on the ground because it's quickly soaked and then it's gone, so you don't need to treat the wastewater and save the cost. It's quite common. Even in Hong Kong, we see the recycling plants that has the soil with a lot of like metals, because it's very likely they just illegally discharge the wastewater on purpose or by accident. So they can save the children cost. And then of course with the afterwards with the incineration process, with the combustion process of electronic waste, we have a lot of vaporization coming out as well. So overview table that hopefully we can refer you to our future review. Then you can have all the details about the concentration of different metals. For example, mercury, like Locke just gave a very good talk about mercury, and then actually that a lot of cases that could come from different sources, and then there would be in fine ash as well, like in the second row. There's also available is vaporized in fine ash, so it end up is like food atmospheric deposition, end up in lake, become methyl mercury, and that could be available, or end up like in from the mine from Guiyang, from the mine, like from mercury mine, the largest mercury mine in China, and end up with atmospheric deposition, then you have lots of mercury in the farmland soil as well. For example, like that. And e-waste, you can see a lot of different range, different kind of materials that will be found. That like lead, for example, and copper and cadmium. Cadmium is quite like Philip also mentioned about that, the cadmium in spinach, which we also often see that in, for example, in Hong Kong or South China. There is cadmium in spinach from time to time, because spinach is so good at absorbing cadmium. And then we have the source. So here the source, and then we have like, for example, selenium, cadmium, mercury. So they are available in ash. So from the fly ash, from the combustion from coal, that we have like plants, we still use a lot of coal for our power source. And for those power source, the ash actually that would be collected and then dumped, most of the case dumped, treated or dumped, or maybe sometimes if it's not captured well, there will be atmospheric deposition. And then they will carry some vaporized metals, like metal rocks, like selenium or cyanides. And then this could be behaving like arsenic, so it's, and then we have an arsenic expert like the Drew is here. So I'm not talking too much about those interactions things, I'm just trying to give an overview of the source. And so with the selenium as a metal rod, so it's behaving like the iron cyanide. There could be a lot of study ongoing in recent years. And the other one, like cadmium, so we have other talks on that, and that could be available in fly ash as well. And also like in factories or maybe some electric arc furnaces that we have those cadmium and eventually end up in our soil or water. And mercury, we'll just talk about that, and then also I maybe don't have to talk too much. So we have inorganic mercury, and then we have methyl mercury. In the past, we only are aware of that methyl mercury would be more available, especially in the lake, that could be long lasting. And then the inorganic mercury could be formed like with metacinnabar, with sulfide, especially in a reduced form, that would be available. But actually, when it's like changing with the redox condition, like is an expert at that, and then that would be transformed, and then the mercury would be even in inorganic form would be available again. That is actually quite a similar case in China that we see inorganic mercury that end up in crops and so just like just was. And so the radioactive elements, because we are more aware of that after the major earthquake and tsunami in Japan that caused the disaster in the nuclear plants, and people are more aware of that. Because like for example in Hong Kong, we also have a big nuclear plant, not in Hong Kong, but not too far away from China, like maybe roughly about 80 kilometers away from Hong Kong. So we have also a nuclear plant nearby, belong to the China context, in Daya Bay in the South China. So we are more concerned nowadays. So we actually have a low level of radioactive waste in daily life, like in our labs. We also have low level radioactive waste that we got to deal with, but that would be relatively easy to stabilize or solidify to isolate that. So most of the case we are counting on isolation, either by the well injection, out of sight, out of mind, and then you make sure that it's not no exposure pathway, then it'll be okay. The other way is like we do like stabilization or solidification, we put it in concrete, and so that we isolated and we store in somewhere in a remote area, for example. And rare earth element, so is the like the in Europe, like in Ghent, Philip's place, and they are more concerned like with like the technology critical elements, so TCEs. So it's a lot of cases where earth elements are available in China, for example, and other selected places. So, but actually we still have a good amount of that, but it's just an uneven distribution around the world. So it's quite some strategic or political concern about that. And most of the cases from the mineral deposit. So actually we extract that or metallurgy from those minerals. But then actually the extraction itself causes a lot of pollution that we are more aware of. Like in China, we have lots of cases with contamination, like with the lithium or other things that we see more and more pollution of the extraction. And nowadays with those end-of-life products, because they are so critical in technology, we use it commonly, although it's not in a great amount, but we dispose a lot and we turn it into incineration, then end up in ash. And actually ash could be quite a good potential that we can try to recover that. So quick overview of these kind of different materials in different sources. So you can see that so far, keep repeating like ash will be a very important, the fly ash or combustion ash from coal, or also from the incineration, from our waste. Actually, it could be a very important source where we can take try to valorize those ash to extract the valuable materials, and then try to turn ash into useful materials. And the common approach that's been reported, like in terms of the methodology, like with the REE, so we can do a lot of series of the extraction using solvent or using acid. That could be available in the industry with the methodology, so that could be potentially applicable in the recycling process as well. And we know that like the US the Department of Energy or the US EPA are also exploring those kind of extraction from ash and try to recover valuable elements as well. So in short, that we have source, and then so we now know more clearly the source of those potential toxic elements. So management is very important from the upstream, whether we can separate them and then try to recycle them, upcycle them, recover them. And if not, then the isolation is very important, like especially, for example, the ash or the landfill, leachate, and so you may have like the SS or PRPs for the preventive measures. And then the stabilization, then you may have some other method to deal with that. And then when we want to remediate it, then we can think about maybe, for example, absorbent, then we can tailor that, like for example, biochar or other things, or turn the ash into construction materials and try to recycle it. So in terms of the fate of those elements, these are the ongoing things that we are working with our European collaborators, that we are we know the source that we have, like the incineration ash and also the municipal, the sludge ash or municipal solid waste, incinerated ash that could be available in our environment and end up in our soil and sediment. And we collect those sediment from different places in Hong Kong and China, and also we collect the soils from Hong Kong and China, soil not from Hong Kong, maybe from China, different part of China. And then we have a full identification to chase the fate and also the impact. That's the ongoing work. My students are still doing the experiments in Europe at the moment in Amsterdam. So we have been like doing the contaminant profiles to have the long target analysis, and based on statistics, we try to find some correlation. And then afterwards, we profile the toxicity and then to test the response. And based on the response, currently our experiments are up to the final phase 3 and 4, and after that, the toxic response, we establish the EDA, effect directed analysis, and then so that we can know the properties and the fate of the contaminants, and hopefully we can wrap the results and to present you some data maybe early next year. So we are reaching the phase 3 and 4 and with the samples right now. So the perspective that we emphasize is like the optimization and resource recovery, for example, that we utilize biochar and we utilize so contaminated sediment and ash and turn it into useful materials again, so that we can upcycle the things. And in terms of the biochar, maybe I quickly go over that. Yes, it seems like overrun with the first half already. So I'll quickly over that with the biochar, that we tailor the biochar, for example, for the unconventional source, the shale gas, which is our popular alternative, the shale oil, shale gas, popular alternative to the petroleum oil. So we have lots of those in America, and then out in America, China is the biggest reserve, so we are very keen on exploring the shale. And come with shale, we have like fracking wastewater, and fracking wastewater, we have like the sludge and so. And how do we deal with that? And what do we have in those fracking wastewater? Actually, we have like selenium, we have like arsenic, we have chromium, and we have copper and zinc, and also chlorinated solvent, and also we have PAH and so on. So a wide spectrum of contaminants are there. And then PAH and PCB will be relatively okay if we use a biochar that we can easily absorb that. So we are trying to tailor the biochar with iron, for example, so that we can deal with the other metalloids like arsenic and chromium, for example. So for that part, we will briefly talk about the tailoring of the biochar. So here is follow the same line. We want to control and understand the species transformation of iron, and also for the biochar structure. So with that, we have different conditions to produce our biochar, and we characterize with those biochar with the graphitization, and also with the surface functionality, and then porous medium, and also the iron bonding with the carbon and also iron species, and so on. So we actually see more disorder defects. So that could be amorphous phase, that could have the stronger reactivity, so that we can have the iron bonding with that. And then what's next, that we can see that we see the form and the transformation of iron and biochar itself is actually there is an interplay, so that we can control design of a biochar production so that we can have the changes of both speciation and the structures. Oops. My control. So for example, for chromates, we see that we have some certain amount of reduction because we are producing like nanogreen iron on our biochar. But at the same time, we also have the iron oxide. So we both have the multifunctionality, like with the reduction of the iron, reduction of the chromate, and then after reduction, chromium-free will be very prone to, is subject to precipitation. That would be either co-precipitation with iron as a green rust, or that could be precipitation itself quickly with the chromium hydroxide. That's what we observe. We see precipitation, but also at the same time, we also see stable complex. Naturally, some chromates remain in this form, but it's a strong form of stable complex with the iron oxide. So even if it's not reduced, that could be removed by the condensation. Oops. So arsenic. Okay. So arsenic, basically, we don't want that the reduction of arsenic to a more toxic, more mobile form. And we actually do know, we see that there's the arsenic 5 is more the case, and then we see the complex again with the iron mainly, and mainly that could be with the disorder defect, and then with the photon transfer. And it's supposed to be inter-sphere ligand exchange based on the XPS result that we have. And also previous studies that we are trying to do some other tests, and we believe that is an inter-sphere complex, which is well reported actually. So with the heterochlorides for chlorinated solvent, and then we mainly have two effects. One is the decoronation by reduction by the silver and iron, and the other one is actually by the absorption. So the absorption is actually playing a big role as well. So that's the thing, we can have the synergy between the biochar and the metals itself, that we have the metal biochar composite that can serve as multiple purpose. And at the same time, we also see this colloidal iron, which is one of the common cases when we have reactive iron species, then eventually that will become like iron dissolution, and that will become like a colloidal form. And that would be affecting the Franking wastewater, especially because we have PAN, for example, there's a stabilizer coagulant, so we are changing the Franking wastewater structures. So that could be the Franking wastewater could be quite interesting matrix that we look into. We keep on our work on those kind of special and conventional ways. So with the colloidal iron detachment is the thing that we are concerned, and would like to see whether we can do better things in the fabrication of the metal biochar, mineral biochar, so that we can control the release while at the same time maintain the reactivity. So with that, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Hana, for this nice presentation, and I would like to ask the audience if there are any questions. Oh, obviously that's not the case. That means your presentation is very clear. I just want to thank you. Just want to draw the attention to one point. The fracking is very critically discussed, especially in Germany, due to the very high environmental impacts which they have. But despite the United States allows this procedure, would you like to give your statement about this?
I also think that environmental impact is huge. That's why I think it's an important issue that we try to think of a new method that are more cost-effective to deal with that. So currently, either like in states, maybe deep well injection like in Texas that they're more used, or if they're more stringent like in Pennsylvania, they could be requiring the membrane separation. So we are trying to explore other methods other than that that can help to mitigate the cost and mitigate the impact. So we believe that that's like the concern in Germany is totally legitimate. And we have concern too, but it's ongoing in China anyway. So it's important energy source.
So you cannot stop the train, huh?
Yeah,
so it's already running. Okay. Oh, let's give our appreciation to Professor Sang.